A little boy in the courtroom points at a policeman, and his words change everything. No one expected a routine hearing to turn into a revelation that would shake the entire system. What did he say? Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. The courtroom buzzed with a tense, expectant energy. The air was heavy with whispered conversations and the occasional rustle of papers as attorneys prepared for the proceedings. The tall windows allowed slivers of golden sunlight to filter through, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floor. Rows of benches were filled with spectators, journalists, legal observers, and members of the public who had followed the case with a morbid fascination. At the center of the tension sat the defendant, a young white man named Thomas Bailey. Shackled at the wrists, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and quiet desperation. Thomas sat hunched over, his gaze cast downward. He had been accused of a brutal crime, an assault on an elderly woman that had left her hospitalized and penniless. The evidence against him seemed damning. The prosecution had forensic reports, testimonies, and a compelling narrative that fit neatly into the expectations of the justice system. He was from the wrong part of town, with a history of financial struggles and no powerful allies to vouch for him. The prosecutor stood with an air of confidence, his suit impeccably pressed, his voice firm as he outlined the charges. He spoke of the crime with meticulous detail, painting a picture of a young man desperate enough to rob and assault an innocent woman. The defense attorney, in contrast, was less polished, visibly overworked and underfunded, but determined to challenge the accusations. He insisted that Thomas had an alibi, one that had not been properly investigated, that the evidence against him was circumstantial at best. Seated a few rows behind the defense was Monica Johnson, a black woman in her mid-30s. She was a reluctant witness in the case, present not out of a sense of duty but because she had been called upon to testify. Her small grocery store was located near the crime scene, and though she had not seen the attack itself, she had caught glimpses of movement from her window. She had little to offer, or so she thought. Her son, Elijah, a 5-year-old boy, sat beside her, holding a small toy car in his hands. Elijah was restless. The setting was unfamiliar, filled with people who spoke in sharp, serious tones. He was too young to understand the gravity of the moment, and so he did what children did. He played, guiding his car along the smooth wooden surface of the bench, creating quiet engine sounds under his breath. His mother hushed him occasionally, placing a hand on his shoulder, but the boy's attention was only half on her. Then the atmosphere in the room shifted slightly. A side door opened, and a group of uniformed police officers entered, moving in an orderly line to take their places near the walls. Their presence was procedural, there to maintain order should it be needed. Among them was a tall, broad-shouldered black man with an air of quiet authority. His posture was rigid, his expression unreadable. His name was Sergeant Darius King. King was well known in the district, a figure both respected and feared. He had a reputation for being tough but fair, a cop who had climbed the ranks through sheer determination. He was often praised for keeping the streets in check, ensuring that crime was swiftly dealt with. He was seen as a protector, someone who took his duty seriously. Elijah, who had been idly playing with his toy, suddenly stopped. His fingers went slack and the car slipped from his grasp, landing on the floor with a soft clatter. His mother turned to him in mild surprise, but her son's attention was locked elsewhere. His small frame tensed, his breath hitched, his wide brown eyes were fixed on Sergeant King. The room continued with its business, lawyers exchanging legal jargon, the judge preparing to proceed with testimonies, but Elijah was no longer a passive observer. His little chest rose and fell quickly, and then, in a voice that was both clear and unwavering, he spoke. "I saw him," he said. The words cut through the courtroom like a blade. Monica stiffened. Heads turned. A ripple of confusion passed through the spectators as they tried to place the source of the voice. The judge, taken aback, glanced toward the boy. Elijah lifted his small hand and pointed directly at Sergeant King. He was there. The room went still. For the first time that day, Thomas Bailey looked up. His lawyer stopped mid-sentence. The prosecutor, who had been flipping through his notes, froze. The judge leaned forward, his gaze settling on the child with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Monica's heart pounded in her chest. She turned to her son, placing her hands on his shoulders, her mind racing. "Elijah," she whispered, trying to understand what he meant, but the boy didn't waver. Sergeant King remained motionless. For a long moment, his expression did not change, but those who looked closely saw the minute tightening of his jaw, the subtle shift in his stance. No one spoke. The weight of the accusation, a child pointing at a decorated police officer, claiming to have seen him at the scene of a crime, was too heavy to ignore. The silence stretched. Then King took a slow, deliberate step back. It was barely noticeable, but to those watching, it was unmistakable. A movement of retreat. The judge tapped his gavel against the bench, his voice breaking the eerie quiet. "We will take a short recess." The moment shattered. Lawyers moved, spectators murmured, the press scrambled to write notes. But as Sergeant King turned slightly, casting a final glance at the child who had just upended the entire courtroom, there was something in his eyes that no one could quite decipher, and Elijah, still gripping the bench, did not look away. The murmurs did not die down as the courtroom emptied for recess. Journalists whispered among themselves, some already typing away on their laptops trying to frame the most shocking headline. Lawyers huddled together, exchanging quiet, hurried words. Officers moved through the space, glancing discreetly at Sergeant King, their trained eyes reading every subtle cue in his posture. Monica held Elijah's hand tightly as she stood from her seat, her body tense. She wasn't sure whether she should leave or stay, but a court official approached her and told her to wait outside the chamber. She nodded, but her mind was racing. She crouched down to her son's level, brushing his forehead with her fingers. "Elijah," she said softly, her voice laced with urgency. "What did you mean back there? Why did you say that?" The boy looked at her with innocent certainty, his face untroubled by the weight of what he had done. His little hands still trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. "I saw him, Mama," he repeated. "That night. He was there." Monica swallowed hard. Her mouth felt dry. She wanted to press further, to ask how, when, why, but before she could, she felt a presence looming nearby. Looking up, she found herself staring into the face of the prosecutor, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and graying temples. "I'd like to speak with you," he said, his tone careful. His gaze flickered briefly to Elijah. "Both of you." She hesitated. Everything inside her told her to take her son and leave, to keep him as far away from this as possible. But something about the way people had looked at Sergeant King when Elijah pointed at him, something about the way the officer had stepped back, it sent an undeniable chill down her spine. Monica nodded. They were taken to a small, windowless consultation room in the courthouse. It was cramped and smelled faintly of stale coffee and paper. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Monica sat Elijah down beside her and placed a protective hand on his knee. The prosecutor took a seat across from them, exhaling through his nose as he studied the boy. "Elijah," he began, folding his hands on the table, "can you tell me what you saw?" Elijah glanced at his mother as if seeking approval. She gave him a small nod. "I saw him that night," the boy said simply, "by the store." "The store?" The prosecutor leaned in slightly. "You mean your mother's store?" Elijah nodded. The prosecutor frowned. What was he doing? Elijah's brow furrowed as he tried to recall. He was by the alley. There was a car, a black one. He was talking to someone, and then he got in and drove away. Monica's breath caught. She had seen a car that night, too, just a glimpse from her window, but she hadn't thought anything of it at the time. It was a dark-colored vehicle, sleek, expensive-looking, parked briefly before vanishing down the street. The prosecutor's eyes sharpened. "Elijah, are you sure it was him?" The boy nodded with the unshakable conviction that only a child could have. "I remember his face." The prosecutor sat back, his fingers tapping against the desk. Monica could see the gears turning in his head. He was considering something, weighing the possibilities. Then a knock at the door interrupted them. A young assistant poked her head inside, her expression serious. "We pulled some initial footage from the area near the crime scene," she said. "There's something you need to see." Minutes later, they were in a small office with a large monitor. A technician clicked through a series of surveillance clips, pausing at a grainy nighttime recording from a security camera across the street from the crime scene. A black car rolled slowly into the frame. It parked near the alley beside Monica's store. The timestamp placed it at roughly the same time as the attack on the elderly woman. Elijah's small hand suddenly gripped Monica's wrist. "That's the car," he whispered. They watched as a tall figure stepped out. The footage was too blurry to make out the man's face, but his posture was eerily familiar. He was broad-shouldered, confident, moving with the same deliberate steps they had all seen just moments ago in the courtroom. The figure spoke to someone in the shadows, gesturing with his hands. Then, after less than a minute, he got back into the car and drove away. The prosecutor's face was unreadable. He turned to his assistant. "Do we have a plate number?" She hesitated. "The quality isn't great, but we're working on enhancing it." Monica felt her chest tighten. This wasn't just a coincidence anymore. Then the assistant spoke again, more hesitantly this time. "There's another camera we're trying to access, one closer to the alley. If we get it, we might have a clearer shot of his face." The prosecutor nodded. "Pull whatever you can. I want answers by tonight." As the assistant left, Monica looked down at Elijah. He was staring at the frozen image on the screen, his expression unreadable. She wrapped an arm around him, her heart pounding. The prosecutor turned to her. "Monica, I need you to be completely honest with me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Have you ever seen Sergeant King near your store before?" She hesitated, sifting through her memories. Had she? Then she remembered something. Months ago, on a quiet evening, a black car had idled across the street for a few minutes before pulling away. She had noticed it because she'd been closing up late, and something about the way it lingered had made her uneasy. She hadn't seen who was inside. At the time, she had assumed it was just a customer who had changed their mind. Her stomach twisted. "I don't know," she admitted. "But now, I think I might have." The prosecutor exhaled through his nose. "If King was there that night," he said carefully, "if he was somehow involved in this, it changes everything." Monica's fingers tightened around her son's hand. Elijah, meanwhile, just kept looking at the screen. The still image of the black car remained on the monitor, frozen in time. The courthouse felt different when Monica and Elijah left the small office where the prosecutor had shown them the surveillance footage. The air was heavier, more charged, like something invisible had shifted. As they walked back down the hallway, Monica held Elijah's hand tightly, her grip firm, protective. She didn't know what she was protecting him from, but instinct told her that everything had changed. The prosecutor moved with purpose, his steps quick and determined. His mind was clearly racing. He pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in hushed but urgent tones. Monica couldn't hear everything he was saying, but she caught snippets. The words plate number, enhance, and find out everything stuck with her. She kept her focus on Elijah, who was quieter than usual. His little fingers curled into her palm as they walked, his small frame tense. She crouched down in front of him, brushing a hand over his forehead. "You okay, baby?" she asked. Elijah nodded slowly but didn't speak. Before Monica could press further, a uniformed officer approached them. Not King. Another man, younger, leaner, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He looked uncertain as he addressed the prosecutor. "Sir, you're going to want to see this," the officer said. The prosecutor's brow furrowed. "What is it?" "They got the other camera feed." Monica felt her pulse quicken. The prosecutor turned to her. "You should come too." She hesitated. Something about this felt too real now, too big. But then she looked at Elijah. This wasn't just about her anymore. It never had been. The new footage was from a different angle, closer, sharper. The black car was the same, parked at the alley's entrance, but this time the man stepping out was unmistakable. Sergeant Darius King. The room went silent. Monica felt her stomach drop as she stared at the screen. King wasn't wearing his uniform in the video, but it was him. The way he moved, the way he carried himself, it was undeniable. The prosecutor rubbed a hand over his jaw. Jesus Christ. Elijah, standing close to his mother, barely reached the height of the desk, but he too was staring at the screen. He looked up at her, his voice quiet but certain. "Told you, Mama." Monica swallowed hard. The prosecutor turned to the officer. "Do we have a time stamp?" "Matches the time of the attack," the officer confirmed. "And we got the plate number. Cars registered to King." A weighted silence hung in the room. The prosecutor exhaled sharply. "Pull his financials. Check if we can find anything off in his transactions." Monica's mind was reeling. Sergeant King wasn't just a cop. He was a respected officer, someone who had built a reputation on being the kind of man who cleaned up the streets. If he was behind this, if he had something to do with framing Thomas Bailey, what else had he done? The officer left to follow orders, and the prosecutor leaned against the desk, arms crossed, lost in thought. Finally, he looked up at Monica. "You and your son should be careful," he said. "If he realizes people are looking into him, this could get dangerous." Monica's stomach clenched. "You think he'd come after us?" The prosecutor hesitated. "I think we're dealing with someone who's been careful for a long time. He's not going to like this attention." Monica felt the weight of those words settle over her. She reached for Elijah's hand again, squeezing it. Hours passed in a blur. The courthouse was no longer just a place of law and order. It felt like a battlefield, one where the enemy still didn't know he'd been exposed. The prosecutor's team worked tirelessly, pulling records, tracing transactions, digging into King's past cases. The deeper they looked, the worse it got. There were patterns. Cases where evidence had conveniently appeared just in time to convict someone. cases where crucial surveillance footage had gone missing. All of them involved black victims or white suspects who came from disadvantaged backgrounds, people the system wouldn't fight too hard to defend. And then they found the money. A series of offshore transactions linked to shell companies, the amounts significant, always deposited after major arrests. They weren't bribes in the traditional sense, but they were payments. Payments for setting people up. Payments for making sure the city had criminals to keep the conviction rates high. Monica sat in the room as the pieces came together. It was bigger than she'd thought. "How long has he been doing this?" she asked. The prosecutor shook his head. "Years." He turned to one of his assistants. "Pull up all the cases he worked on for the last 5 years. I want to see every conviction, every piece of evidence he presented." Monica glanced down at Elijah, who had curled up in a chair, his toy car resting in his hands. He looked small, vulnerable. She felt an overwhelming sense of protectiveness rise in her chest. She wasn't a lawyer, she wasn't an officer, but she was a mother, and her son had just cracked open something enormous. The prosecutor's phone rang. He answered quickly. His face hardened as he listened. "Where?" he asked. Monica sat up straighter. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "King just left the courthouse," he said. "We don't know where he's going." A cold chill passed through Monica. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" the prosecutor asked her. Monica nodded, though she wasn't sure how safe anywhere was right now. The prosecutor exhaled. "I'll have someone escort you home. We're making an arrest soon, but until then, don't take any chances." Monica didn't argue. She gathered Elijah in her arms and stood. As they left the courthouse, stepping into the evening air, she glanced around, feeling eyes on her even when she couldn't see anyone watching. King knew. And now it was only a matter of time. Monica barely slept that night. Every sound outside, every creak of the house made her tense, made her heart beat a little faster. She had locked the doors, checked the windows twice, kept her phone close, but none of it erased the unease settling deep in her bones. Something was coming. She could feel it. Elijah had fallen asleep in her bed, his small body curled under her arm, his breathing steady. She watched him for a long time, brushing a hand over his head, wondering how everything had turned upside down in a matter of hours. Her son, just 5 years old, had seen what no one else had pointed at a man the whole city trusted, and now nothing would ever be the same. The police escort outside was supposed to make her feel safer. 2 officers sat in a squad car parked just beyond her driveway, watching the house. The prosecutor had insisted on it. "Just for tonight," he had said, though Monica knew better. If King really wanted to come after them, if he was desperate enough, 2 men in a car wouldn't stop him. She didn't know when she drifted off, but when she woke, it was to the sound of her phone vibrating loudly on the nightstand. The room was still dark, the sky outside barely starting to shift into dawn. She reached for the phone, her stomach twisting when she saw the name on the screen. It was the prosecutor. She answered immediately. "He's gone." Monica sat up straight, her breath catching. "What?" "King. He didn't go home last night. He didn't check in at his precinct. He's not answering calls." A cold, creeping sensation crawled up Monica's spine. She threw the blanket off, her mind already racing. "Do you think—" "We don't know what he's planning, but we're moving fast. We've got a warrant out, and we're sending units to search for him. I wanted to let you know to stay put." Monica's grip on the phone tightened. "You really think staying here is safe?" A long pause, then, quietly, "I don't know." Monica looked at Elijah, still sleeping soundly, unaware of the storm brewing around him. She exhaled shakily. "Then I'm leaving," she said. She dressed quickly, waking Elijah gently, keeping her voice calm so he wouldn't panic. She packed a small bag, just essentials, clothes, documents, some cash. She called her sister, explaining in the briefest way possible that she needed to come over, that it wasn't safe to stay where she was. By the time she opened the door, stepping outside with Elijah's small hand in hers, the officers in the squad car had already been alerted. One of them, a younger cop with wary eyes, stepped out. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Somewhere safe," Monica said. The officer hesitated. "We were told to keep you here." Monica squared her shoulders. "And if he comes here first? If he's watching?" The officer had no response to that. The second officer leaned forward from the car. "Let's escort her. She's right. If he's desperate, he won't care about us sitting here." The first officer hesitated again, then nodded. "Okay, we'll follow you." Monica didn't let herself feel relief. Not yet. She buckled Elijah into the car and got in herself. The squad car followed behind as she pulled out of the driveway, turning onto the empty street. The city was still asleep, but to Monica, every dark corner, every empty sidewalk felt dangerous. It wasn't until she was several blocks away that she glanced in the rearview mirror and noticed something strange. A third car, far behind, turning onto the same road. Her stomach clenched. It wasn't marked. It wasn't a squad car. "Elijah," she said softly, keeping her voice steady. "Stay buckled, okay, baby?" He blinked up at her, groggy but obedient. She kept driving, her hands gripping the wheel tighter. The car behind them stayed at a distance but matched every turn. She didn't have to see the driver to know. It was him. The squad car behind her hadn't noticed yet, but she didn't dare reach for her phone. If she called attention to it, if King realized she had seen him, would he make a move? Her pulse pounded. Another turn. Another. The car stayed. She saw the highway entrance ahead. If she got on, if she sped up, she could lose him. But before she could act, the blue and red lights of the squad car behind her flashed, and one of the officers' voices crackled over the car's loudspeaker. "Pull over." Not at her. At the car behind them. King didn't stop. Monica watched through the mirror as he suddenly sped up, swerving sharply to the left, shooting past them on the opposite lane. The officers reacted instantly. The squad car peeled away from her, sirens blaring, taken off in pursuit. Monica's breath caught. Elijah whispered, "Mama?" She forced her voice to be calm. "It's okay, baby." But it wasn't okay. She saw it in the way King's car darted between lanes, the way he pushed forward despite the sirens, despite the flashing lights. He wasn't trying to run. He was trying to get somewhere before they could stop him, before he could reach her. Monica slammed her foot on the gas. The highway opened up in front of her and she drove faster, hands tight on the wheel, fear pressing against her chest. She didn't know where she was going anymore. She just knew she had to get away. Behind her, sirens screamed, and ahead, the city stretched out into the morning light. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Watch our next video or explore others on the channel. Share this video with your friends and family.